The graphs for A block and C block show a general trend in increasing lines. However, individual graphs show some differences. For example, for girls 15 and 6 months over, A block and C block both show a similarity in that the underweight category deviates from what one would normally expect. Even though people are taller, they tend to be skinnier and weigh less. But different for the A block graph, the graph declines so much so that the height decreases as the weight increases, even more than the overweight graph. For boys 15 years old and 6 months over, boys tend to be taller and heavier, but for A block's data, the two graphs are unexpected. The shorter the students, the heavier they are.
Okay, so for girls aged 13 to 15 years and 6 months, there are a few differences. For example, if you look at the red and the orange lines, you can see that they overlap. This is not usual because the taller the student is, the heavier she eventually gets. However, if you see the orange line, which represents students who are heavier than those representing the red line, it eventually crosses the red line. This means that eventually at the same height, those representing the orange line will have a lower weight than those representing the red line, who are supposed to be underweight. Boys aged 13 to 15 years and 6 months, there's a huge difference between the actual data of Block C and Block A. For example, in Block A, underweight at 159 centimeters is 53 kilograms, but for Block C, underweight at 159 centimeters is 40 kilograms. Through comparing the different data, I learned that the actual BMI, the universal BMI that represents practically the entire world's weight and height of people, might not be truly accurate because there are so many different cases existing.
To compare and contrast the results, I tracked numerous points on the different graphs and found their locations. Unlike what I had expected, there were no drastic differences, especially between graphs showing subjects of the same gender but different ages. Therefore, I felt that there really is no need to separate groups by age. However, I found that there were some differences between the graphs of different genders. Through looking at them, I was able to see that even though a girl and a boy may have the same height and weight, the boy always tended to be more underweight than the girl, and the girl will be placed more on the right side of the graph than the boy. Therefore, in this case, I thought that it would be better to separate groups by gender for more accurate representation of a person's body. From this, I was able to conclude that the current BMI chart is not the very best chart that one should refer to. I think it is important that people realize that the cases differ for different groups of people. In this case, gender. Therefore, people should not completely rely on the current BMI chart, but also look towards factors such as body fat and muscle percentage until a more accurate BMI chart is created.
The two things we needed to successfully complete this project were 1. Objectivity and 2. Observation. Objectivity is hard. It can be difficult to leave your personal preconceptions and feelings out of it, especially if you're a teenage girl facing media and peer pressure about a sensitive topic like body composition. You also have to consider all the data, even if it messes with your expectations of what something should look like. Observation is also important, as a lot of significant information can be lost in figures and graphs. For example, the conclusions mentioned in question 2 about gender and age differences. Often it seems that the expert approach is also just the simplest or the easiest. For example, the universal BMI chart would be used by both a 125-year-old man and a 19-year-old woman. They call it the universal approach, but it doesn't mean it is necessarily the best way to measure everything or everybody. This can be applied to most other things in life. The more in-depth and specific something is, the more accurate the representation. The difficult part is finding a nice balance between multifacetedness and depth.